Hi there and welcome. Today I want to say some of the things that need saying about the criminalisation of Miss Letby's Facebook searches. I'm also going to take the opportunity to draw attention to the most outrageous of the many newly minted methods of attack that was allowed to be put before the jury. Finally, I just have to get something else off my chest about the improbable success of the prosecution case at the Child K retrial. On the Facebook evidence, just on first principles, before even gathering any information, a few anomalies jumped out at me about this ghoul sub-narrative. The Facebook searches on the parents was presented as evidence of Miss Letby's malevolence, presenting her as some kind of emotional vampire who apparently killed the babies in order to be able to later feed off the grief of the parents. It is, in reality, just another of the many examples from the case of how the media-fed mania that a person is guilty of something can build a momentum that excludes even basic rational thought. For that particular article of faith of the serial killer myth to make any sense, then Facebook searches would surely have also needed to precede the so-called attacks. Think about it. If you are going to target only about some 0.5% of the thousands of babies you'll have had access to, wouldn't some form of selection come into play? If it is your intention to feed on the grief afterwards, wouldn't you do the obvious thing of maximizing that gratification by choosing as victims parents whose lifestyle you had a natural antipathy for? Where would you be if, having ripped the heart out of a person by killing their baby, you then find out from Facebook that you have the same taste in music, the same favorite film, or other commonalities that make a person congenial? Even within the logic of their grief ghoul sub-narrative, this makes sense. If you know that you will be doing searches on your victims anyway, and you have your phone on you at work and are allowed to go on Facebook at work, why wouldn't you? What better, more complete, and readily available means of doing the research for your victim screening could you find? As it happens, the closest to such a fact-finding before attack search was a Facebook search on child G's parents some 5 days after the baby had been returned to the neonatal unit from Arrow Park Hospital. Miss Letby was indeed charged with 1 count of attempted murder against the baby on that day, for that day rather. The only problem is that said count was one of those 2 not guilty verdicts I mentioned in the previous video I did. And she was actually found guilty on 2 counts of attempted murder on the same method against the same baby 2 whole weeks before. Tellingly, they don't supply the time for that Facebook search, suggesting strongly that it was after the claimed overfeeding, which took place at 9 in the morning. Given that this search wasn't far enough in the future for their ghoul narrative, you can be certain that had it preceded their claimed attack, they would have pointed to it as evidence of intent to do that harm. Even more tellingly, that 21st of September Facebook search was the only one Miss Letby ever did on child G's parents. How is that consistent with her being motivated by a need to feed off people's grief? In fact, of the 4 cases of which I have full knowledge, in 3 of them, only a single Facebook search was ever made. In one case, child K, that single search did not happen for over 2 years. 2 years and 2 months to be precise. More damningly for Cheshire Constabulary's nasty ghoul sub-narrative, in none of the 4 cases was the implied targeting apparent, as no parent was searched for on Facebook before the claimed attack. The one case featuring more than one search was child F, with apparently 9 searches on the mother between 6th of August 2015 and January of 2016. That 6th of August was 1 day after the claimed attack and 2 days after the death of child F's twin, child E. If enjoying the grief was Miss Letby's motivation for murder, why stop searching after only 4 months? Though child F survived, as I said, his twin, child E, had died, so the parents remained a ready source of that fictitious grief energy on which she was supposed to be feeding. The twin aspect between child F and the other case makes them a source of insight also into the machinations of the prosecution in distorting the same piece of information to manipulate jurors and, I think, the public through the papers emotionally. As stated just now, the child F case report shows the prosecution telling the court that 9 searches were done on the mother between August the 6th, 2015 and January of 2016. In the more emotive case of the second twin, where we simultaneously get more and less information, both calculated to increase hostility towards Miss Letby. It doesn't give the number of searches, as in the child F case, but states that she did, I quote, social media searches on the parents, end quote. By using the term social media rather than simply Facebook, it insinuates searches across multiple platforms, which was not the case. If Miss Letby had searched on other platforms, they would have known and they would have said so. Next, the term the parents misinforms us to an idea of searches on both parents, not the mother only, as was explicitly stated in the child F report. It then goes on to give the dates, the child E report this is still, which turns out to be roughly, almost exactly 1 for each remaining month of 2015. From that point, it then states, and I quote again, it then states there were further, open quotes, it then states there were, open quotes, further searches in January 2016, end quotes, leaving it to the imagination how many. There were in fact 3. As Miss Letby told the court, her searches were the idle curiosity by someone who is always on her phone. After sharing so intense an experience with other people as handing over their dead child and crying with them, what is weird about taking subsequent interest in them? Most revealingly, though strictly kept out of the media, Miss Letby actually searched on over 2,000 people on Facebook. A final point on the Facebook searches which has to be made is this. The Edward Snowden whistleblowing over bulk storage of all US and UK digital communications only broke in 2013 and was still making headlines in 2014. If, in 2015, Miss Letby was still unaware that her digital footprint was permanently recorded, she would have been just about the only functioning adult under 40 in the country still in that state of ignorance. Everyone knows online searches are recorded. Why would you link yourself to the family of a baby you had killed in that way when there was nothing else to link you to them? Along with everything else about the ghoul sub-narrative, it makes no sense. Moving on to my second topic. It is one that would be capable of performing the function of farcical light relief if the stakes were not as high as they are. Last week I read the Child Age report for the first time, taking 8 A4 pages of notes to help cement understanding. Just after finishing it, it occurred to me that I still had no idea what Miss Letby was supposed to have done to the baby, but I parked that concern in order to get on with something else. It was only a day or two later when I found myself looking over the full list of all 22 verdicts and allegations on the Tattle Life website that I realized why. The allegation actually given to the court for Child Age is, quote, attempted murder, method unclear, end quote. Those of you who watched part 2 of my dive into the Child K case will recall that I went back to first principles there, explaining that attempted murder, as any other criminal attempt, is posited on the commission or omission by the defendant of an act more than merely preparatory to the full offence. How on earth does method unclear meet such a standard in an English court? It gets better as well. The jury somehow managed not to reach a verdict on one of the 2 counts. Looking over those 22 verdicts and allegations, I also noticed for the first time that there were actually 9 different attack methods, 10 if you include the method unclear of the Child Age case. Those methods ranged from sophisticated pseudoscience such as embolism to apparently just giving the baby what amounts to a boxing body punch by way of nonsense like overfeeding. 2 convictions there in the Child G case. Ironically, Brere's baby O was one of only 3 unanimous convictions. I also noted that tube dislodgement is the officially listed method regarding Child K. Setting totally to one side what increasingly looks like overwhelming evidence that Miss Letby was not even in the room, let alone the nurse in Jairam's fantasy, the evidence he himself gave to the court makes it clear that he began his resuscitation using the same tube without making any adjustments. It clearly appeared fine. Outwardly, it was only the fact of the oxygen saturation continuing to fall during his medical intervention, all the way down to 40% from being in the 80s when he first started, that caused him to conclude that the tube was not properly situated. The registrar, Dr. James Smith, also gave evidence of the requirement for an X-ray to confirm that an endotracheal tube is correctly situated inside a baby's lungs. Moreover, the intubation process for a premature baby is a highly technical one which only consultants and experienced registrars perform, generally needing several attempts to get it right. Officially, I believe some very senior, very experienced nurse practitioners can also be trained to do it, but certainly, and I think that might be under supervision too, but certainly not ordinary nurses. The point I'm making is that a nurse at Miss Letby's level did not have the training, technical knowledge or skill to have the confidence to try internal tube dislodgement as a method of harm. We also can't allow them to shift the goalpost on us here. You see, the prosecution's opening statement stressed how the ETT was secured by tape to the baby's headgear. I quote, Dr. Jairam found Child K's breathing tube had been dislodged. Child K was very premature and had been sedated and inactive. The tube had been secured by tape and attached to Child K's headgear. End quote. Their insinuation, and therefore the allegation that the prosecution should stand or fall on, is that Miss Letby appeared to have visibly interfered with it. The only conclusion I can come to in all the circumstances is that Miss Letby was convicted in this year's retrial of managing to dislodge the ETT internally in a way that obviously wasn't visibly outwardly. A jury cannot have convicted her for outward interference with it in light of the full evidence from Jairam and the further information of the X-ray check being necessary to confirm the thing is properly situated inside the baby. As such, the prosecution appears to have been permitted to change one horse to another of superficially similar appearance in midstream. Okay, so that's what I had to say about say to you today. Please feel free to share your own thoughts and any information which you think might be of interest to me or anyone else viewing in the comments section below. And as usual, thank you for watching. Thank you for your time, and all the best.